You're listening to Good Morning Dublin with myself, Ken Cowley, and Amanda Whitehead. Now, our next guest in studio is Alison Hackett, who has written a stunning new Irish book with an international story. It's called The Visual Time Traveller, and it's 500 years of history, art and science in 100 unique designs, over 1,000 facts woven into 100 graphic designs in a beautiful bespoke book. So, Alison, good morning. Thanks for coming into the studio.
Hello, Ken.
And can you tell us a little bit about just an overview of the concept behind the book and how it came about?
Well, I guess it grew out of a poster that I had done in the last job I was working in, which was for the Institute of Physics. And we had created a big poster which was showing history of physics in a timeline from around 1500 up to the present day, so including Galileo, Newton, all the big greats, Einstein. But alongside the timeline of the physics concepts, we put in other subjects, such as the arts or exploration or other sciences, chemistry, physics, and even sports. And therefore you could see these things that were happening in physics, but you could also see what might be happening in another subject, for example, some literature, or when a building was completed, or when Henry VIII built the first tennis court, for example. And this was a way to give you history and context and make it interesting. So if you weren't a physicist, you might be interested in one of the other things, but it would draw you in. So that was the concept. And then the book came out of that poster, the concept of really developing it into a much more comprehensive piece of history.
Because it is amazing how many things happen together. You know, you look at a 5-year period and you say, oh my God, that happened and that happened and that happened.
Exactly, yeah. And when I was developing doing the research, and I was trying to narrow this down into 12 facts, this was the maximum I was going to be able to include on any page in the book. It was quite difficult because I would fill up and I'd suddenly have 25 facts, and then I would suddenly be in this sort of it felt like a powerful position of having to make a decision about which facts I would keep. Now, back in the 16th century, it wasn't quite as easy to populate the pages because it was just harder to find the history, to be honest. But the 20th century, I had 30, 40, 50 things, and the 20th century was much more charged because, you know, I felt my politics were going to be much more evident about the facts that I would choose to include or not include, and I also had to be careful about people who were alive and was I going to include them in the book. So the whole journey in a way was filled with these problems, and one of the things that I tended to do while I was planning it was I'd do one 5-year time period in the 16th century, and I do one in the 17th century, one in the 18th century, 19th and 20th century. So I was spreading right across those 5 centuries at any one time, but that made it even more interesting.
And did it feel like a natural period to use, like the sort of bookended by the Gutenberg press, and then you've got the Wikipedia area that we're in now?
That grew out of the poster, and the reason we had started in the 16th century really was because of Copernicus, and that's 1543 when Copernicus published his famous book stating that everything wasn't moving around the Earth. It was all the heliocentric, everything was moving around the Sun. And that's when a lot of physicists and scientists would say physics proper began. Physics used to be called natural philosophy, interestingly enough. Now, I included one page on the whole of the 15th century to include the Gutenberg printing press and Columbus discovering America, some of the exploration, mainly because those two very, very powerful things really meant the development from the Renaissance on to the present day.
And some of those individuals that crop up in the book are, I mean, we have the term Renaissance man or men or women, and they did so many things, didn't they? Someone like Michelangelo or Leonardo.
Yeah, and when I was doing one of the first big pages that I developed was 1500 to 1505, which was, and it jumped out for me that in that time period, Michelangelo was creating the sculpture of David. At the same time, and within the same 5 years, Da Vinci was creating the Mona Lisa, that wonderful famous painting we all know about. So that really struck me, and I'm not somebody who is a historian, and I'm not even great at history, so I loved having a way for me to learn history in some ways. And what really struck me as well was that people like Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Albrecht Dürer in the Northern Renaissance, they tended to be almost polymaths. They were artists and inventors and sculptors, but really working on the science side as well. So this was completely tapping into what I wanted to do and think about. And I felt that in the modern day, we are perhaps a little too specialised and we don't think across in this same way. So I'm hoping the book highlights this for people.
Okay, and to come to the book itself then, because the book is a really beautiful item. Myself and Amanda were looking at it earlier, and it's hard to get across the beauty of it on radio. The designs which you've also got in an exhibition, which we'll mention as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how you put together the pages?
I guess I was having a long and deep conversation with the designers about how we would go about this. So the designers are Origin Design, based on Wicklow Street in Dublin. Absolutely fantastic. They really came on the journey with me because I requested that, once we narrowed it down to 100 designs, that we were already talking about that concept, but I started to say, I don't want any two of these to look the same. I would like you to try different fonts. I'd like you to do some illustrations, get off the computers, try out something really different on every page, so that when somebody turns a page, they get that wonderful surprise of the visual, which would draw you in. You immediately see something that strikes you. For example, the Mona Lisa one is on this page, 1500 to 1505. On the 1895 to 1900 page, we have Dracula, a wonderful dramatic image of Dracula. That this was a very early design they developed. But always on the page there's a little more. So on the Mona Lisa page, where we have an image of the Mona Lisa in the background, we've put the text on that page, the 12 facts, the thing about Michelangelo creating the sculpture of David, and some of the other facts, which include the dodgest of the Borgia popes died, and Nicholas Copernicus was monitoring a lunar eclipse. They've been listed in the text running across the Mona Lisa's eyes in the shape of a comet, because there was another fellow called Johannes Werner who was tracking a comet. So there's a playful thing in these designs in that you don't immediately get it, and my short word for this is eye candy and brain food, so that some people are more visual. They come to a design and they immediately want to look at the image and think about the colour and either love it or love the idea of it on their wall. Or other people are real readers and they just want to read the text and they want to get at the text as quickly as possible. And in some ways we did have a lot of debates during this where I would be saying, you've got to make the text more legible. Whereas as designers, they sometimes would want the design to dominate a little bit more and the text would get smaller. So we played back and forth with that. And I think we have managed to end up with something truly fascinating, because I would class myself as both. I'm absolutely a reader and a word person, but I really love design too. And I still get a lot out of these designs. I'll turn a page and I'll find a little more within it that they brought to it. So yeah, it was quite a complex process doing this.
And I imagine it would make a great educational tool because it's so multidisciplinary, yet it's great fun as well.
Yeah, that's again, I'm a former maths teacher. I love teaching. I love things switch on for people. And there's a little girl who's 10 years old who saw me giving a talk, and she requested the book for her birthday, which was just lovely, and got in touch with me. And she said it inspired her and some of the kids in her class. Very much, I think, because it gives the jumping off points. I'm just giving a fact. I'm not being any more prescriptive about it or going much deeper with it, so people can explore to their own extent. One page in this book, for example, a primary school teacher could take the page and give the page to the class with the 12 facts in it. You're in your top 5 years, in whatever century you're in, and they could develop their own design. They could find 12 other facts, or maybe they could take one of the facts and build a whole project around one of them. So I felt that the book was a real stepping off point in that way.
And to come back a little bit to the beauty of the book and the designs in it, you said they're graphic designers, the people who helped you with the look of it. So they're not artists, yet it also looks like a piece of art.
I think a lot of graphic designers could very much claim to be artists as well. They do tend to call themselves graphic designers, but they did get an illustrator involved who is a graphic designer, but she was strong in illustration. So she came in at a very early stage, and she really started to supply a lot of these designs that which were being interpreted by Garrett Bennis, who is the creative director in his design house. And it was very often an interesting conversation I would have with Garrett about the history we were talking about, and I might be elucidating a little bit more about it or giving a bit more background to it, and he would come up with some very interesting design idea, which I wouldn't even realise he'd done this, and then he would communicate this to Sarah, the illustrator, Sarah Maloney, and between them I would come in a couple of weeks later and they would just be knockout. I would know from the initial illustrations, which were way far behind the finished product here, but I knew immediately that's it.
They were on the right track.
They're on the right track, and it has that lovely, cryptic, playful message coming through.
Okay, and you were saying to me earlier that you very much see it as an organic growing project. I mean, and the Facebook page is a great example of how we can do that these days easily and cheaply. So, and people should go and look at that and look at these pictures. And but you've other pictures in there too.
Yeah, the Facebook page. I started at again. We were beginning the project. Again, I'd have to credit Garrett Bennett suggesting that I did that. And I hadn't used Facebook before. I'm not on Facebook myself, so I was learning both things at the same time. But as you said, I kind of took to it like a duck to water, because it allowed me to, first of all, on Facebook you can link all the time. So you can take another picture that's on the internet and you can either link to it, or it's generally permitted to share these kind of things because they're already in the domain. And so I did. I would. I might be researching something on the Mona Lisa, and then I'd go find out more. I'd be on the Wikipedia page. I'd be finding out. I'd be linking across to other pages, and the Facebook page became brilliant because I could take an image from there. I could take several images if I liked, pop it up on the Facebook page, and then as a comment, I would start filling the comment with a paragraph of history. And it would be a synopsis of my take on something like the Mona Lisa. But it was a vehicle for me to not exactly replicate the book, but to give another whole dimension to the book. And there's a lot of very interested followers in it, so it's great.
And in terms of dimensions, and indeed you've also, when people who go onto your website can see you blog and you write about this and other areas. I know you publish as well. You're a publisher. What about the exhibition? Can you tell us a little bit about the exhibition?
I guess at a fairly early stage I had kind of popped out those words, gosh, these designs are so beautiful, they deserve an exhibition. And once the thing's in your head, there's a certain way that it's just going to happen. And approaching the time, because I was self-publishing, I just decided to take that leap. I felt it was beautiful. I felt that I would be happy if people came to see the exhibition and got a bit of a buzz, got a conversation going about this alternative way of looking at history. And it would just add a wonderful dimension to the book. So the exhibition is on at the moment in the RDS library, and it is providing a lovely way for people to come and engage with the whole project, because I'm doing talks on it as well, and it's just providing, as many people are saying, it's filling it out. Because the book on its own, if you haven't talked to me, or if you haven't seen the exhibition, or if you haven't looked at the Facebook page, it's a little bit narrow in some ways. You don't get the wealth of extra information that is out there.
And the exhibition at the RDS, which I've been into, and it's absolutely stunning. It's right in the middle of the floor of that beautiful building, which is the library in the RDS, just newly reopened after refurbishment. And I think people may not even be aware that the public can go to this exhibition, even though the RDS is a private institution.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's open. And the
library's open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And I think on Wednesdays and Thursdays might be open a little later until 6. And they're absolutely delightful in there. It's a beautiful building. 1965 is where it dates from, so it's celebrating its 50th anniversary next year. And the RDS itself was founded in 1731. And very much this is the idea behind the RDS, to celebrate the arts, science, agriculture, history, industry. They do wonderful work there. So the library itself is a lovely place to visit. It has an amazing collection. They had very nicely the other day with the book. They came in the morning, and the book is in a glass perspex cube, and the sun was coming in and it was shining through the book, and it had created a little prism effect. So there was this lovely little rainbow where light can be split into the colours, landing right on the book. And they then opened one of the pages in my book, which is 1700 to 1705, is a description of how light can be split into colours, using and playing on the dark side of the moon cover with the triangle and the colours splitting into the spectrum. So they opened this page on the book, and Newton printed that in 1704. It's called Optics, O-P-T-I-K-S, as it was spelt then. And they got this rainbow landing right on where the rainbow is in the book. And you can see that on the Facebook page. It was a lovely example of a way to share the sort of excitement of the book, and the fact that the RDS has a first edition of Newton's Optics in its library. So just a lovely connection again
lovely
with the book.
there.
Yeah.
And of course the Dark Side of the Moon, that's something there for the music fans.
Exactly.
And the RDS will be a very it's a very appropriate place for you, to given the ideals behind the RDS. It's a very appropriate place for you to have your first exhibition there. Would you like to take it to, you know, Tate Modern or MoMA or in New York, any of those places?
I would absolutely love to. I would love to. I mean, my ideal would be if all 100 of the designs could be in an exhibition, because that way you could go, get the full journey, walk through it, take your time, and then if you wanted to, get the book at the end. And the book, considering there are 100 original designs in this, really is a good price, if I'm allowed to say that, at €45, because it means each print in that book is less than €1 each, less than 50 cents actually. So I would love to do that in the future, and because it's worldwide history and I haven't restricted it to Ireland, I really think the other countries will be interested in it. First of all, obviously the English-speaking countries, but I'd be hopeful maybe translations and things could happen. It's a little bit predominantly European, because it is from the Renaissance, and Europe was very dominant. I'm Irish and I live in Ireland, and there's nice nods to Ireland in it, but I did try to get as much world history and big stage things into it as I could, you know.
Well, it's the start of a wonderful journey I think you're on, and I think it'll be a great success, and we'd certainly encourage our listeners to check out the Facebook page. We'll put up the link to that. Go along to the exhibition, buy the book. The book's available in bookshops as well.
It is. Hodges Figgis, Imma Bookshop, the National Gallery Bookshop, out in Dunleary in the Framework Gallery, and various other independent sellers.
And can you give us just one website that we can refer our listeners to?
I think probably The Visual Time Traveller, all one word, thevisualtimetraveller.ie. So absolutely run the whole word together, and it's traveller with the English spelling as opposed to the American spelling, so 2 L's in traveller.
Very good. Okay, and thanks very much for coming, Alison. Good luck with the project.
Thank you very much, Ken.